Thank you so much for your testimony today. The entire DoD has to innovate to compete against the other great powers, but U.S. Transportation Command faces a unique set of challenges. Transportation Command's communications networks, systems, and software have to support deploying troops and sustainment around the world. They receive inputs and data from many different government entities and also via doing business with private companies, for example, shipping companies and commercial air carriers. But cybersecurity vulnerabilities in Transportation Command's network risks exposing our troops' locations, readiness levels, and operational plans. And the requirement to work with private business complicates addressing these weaknesses. Dr. Schmidt, during your time on the Defense Innovation Board, the board produced a number of recommendations regarding the DoD's digital networks and cybersecurity vulnerabilities. In your opinion, how should Transportation Command in particular approach rapidly improving its cybersecurity without losing its ability to respond to warfighters and work with civilian entities? Your suggestions could include technical innovations, organizational changes, or perhaps policy proposals, for example. And I love this idea of picking several projects and approaching them radically differently in terms of procurement. Thank you.
Thank you. So our group actually visited St. Louis in the Transportation Command, and it was a very, very interesting visit. So the key room is the room where you have people in uniform who are basically have two screens, and there's an order from one shipping system, and they type the number of the order into the other screen and to cause it to move along. So that's the level of automation that we unfortunately have in that. Any company would have integrated that, and we recommended that. My own view is that there is a proposal in Transportation Command to do a new transportation system, which was hung up in a bunch of procurement issues, but the 80 or so different systems are going to have to get replaced by a more unified system, and that more unified system will have to have modern security. That's how we would address your concern. Because of the way it's currently architected, you're correct that we're very exposed to attack because there's so many different systems that are disparate and they're not unified.
Thank you. General Carlisle, do you have any recommendations based on your work with the commercial business members of the National Defense Industrial Association?
Yes, ma'am. And Senator, thank you for the question. I agree with Mr. Schmidt, and I think we saw it in the command centers as well, and how we integrate across different systems, even jointly between the services. And I think, the comment was made earlier, we have a tendency to have our sensor suites are all stovepiped and our communications are often stovepiped. And what industry needs is the common architecture and the ability to work across the different systems. And I think Transportation Command's a great example of that, where they're working with the whole of government, really, in the commercial enterprise, but the systems aren't compatible. So what Dr. Schmidt said, and our ability to drive industry to have a set of standards and out of the stovepipe challenges that we face today in many of our systems as they try to communicate.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'm closely watching the progress of future vertical lift, both because I'm personally interested in the advancement of rotary wing aviation as a rotor head myself, and also because the Army has made a number of smart decisions as it has developed the program. I'm hoping that some of these decisions can be adopted across the DoD.
Ma'am, sorry.
Requiring.
You broke up,
Go ahead.
Senator Duckworth.
Yes?
If you could
Oh,
repeat the
okay.
question.
I'm going to turn my video off because that seems to be the problem here. I apologize. I was talking about the future vertical lift and a language I had in last year's NDAA requiring a review of lessons learned in employing open systems architecture in the FVL program. Dr. Schmidt, what are the benefits of using open systems architecture in programs like Future Vertical Lift? And what barriers do you see to the military services using this approach in future acquisitions?
Thank you. I love your question because I'm also a very big helicopter person.
Fantastic.
If you look at the way the aviation world has worked, many of the structures and so forth are relatively secret and proprietary. And what we've learned with more sharing across the industries, you get more, the whole industry moves faster. So I strongly recommend that open source designs be made available. And my personal view is that the way the Defense Department should do these things is that the Defense Department should have design studios that design things which are owned by the government, and then that technology is that they own is then given to the manufacturers to then develop further. But I'd like the government to own much more of its own intellectual property by developing it itself, by funding teams, design teams. I also think that that will allow for faster iteration throughout the primes and their manufacturing cycles.
Thank you. And I'm out of time, but if you could follow up with any type of barriers and any recommendations overcoming barriers in written format after the hearing, I would appreciate it. Thank you.